Well, thank you very much. And it's an honor to deliver this keynote here at my former workplace. And just as you heard before, 2 years ago, I left this excellent library, Germany's largest academic library, to move into a vibrant, colorful world of public libraries. And you may recall this study over here from 2017, which indicates that only 8% of all the libraries worldwide using VuFind are actually public libraries. Just 8%. The figure may have shifted since then, but likely not significantly in proportion. So why is that? And as I wrote in my abstract for this keynote, public libraries are not typically associated with software development, especially not with the creation and maintenance of complex systems such as catalogues and discovery systems. In most cases, IT expertise within these institutions is limited, resources are stretched thin, and the demands of daily operations take precedence over long-term technical innovations. Not so on the scientific libraries, of course. As a result, the development of sophisticated digital solutions is rarely seen as a scope competency of public libraries and is left to external providers. The Berlin Public Library Network, so-called FIP, however, to which the ZLB, the Central Library of Berlin, belongs, is in a rather privileged position. Thanks to the establishment of its dedicated FIP Service Center, we have access to a level of technical expertise and organizational support that is not always available elsewhere. This unique advantage now enables us to explore new directions and to take a more active role in shaping the digital infrastructure of public libraries. But the question remains, why? Why should we do this? Why not take the simple route and adopt an off-the-shelf commercial product, which, to be fair, is often quite decent in quality? And my personal answer lies more than 20 years back. So let's take a short time travel to the year 2004. Google launched its Google Books Library project. Real mass digitization at true scale of entire libraries, entire library collections. European libraries were deeply skeptical, yet in 2007, the Bavarian State Library became the first in Germany to open its doors to Google, and high up on mountains in the Alps, the first digitization centers began their work. For us research libraries, this was a mere shock. And no one of us wanted to cede the field of the digital library to Google, at least without a proper fight. What is Google doing there in our very own well? And with great effort, the Europeana was rapidly launched in 2008. And in the same year, the first plans for the German digital library, the so-called DDB, Deutsche Digitale Bibliothek, also began to take shape. Intended to bring together Germany's library holdings in digital form. I was then directing the Göttinger Digitization Center at the SUB Göttingen, State and University Library. And I was involved from this in this endeavor from the very first meeting. And in that context, I had the opportunity to convene some of the brightest minds in the library community at that time for a 2-day workshop at Göttingen. And we wanted the German digital library to ship with a few distinctive features, capabilities neither Google nor other library digital catalogues could offer at the time. So this was 2008, this DDB workshop. And well, this is our white paper, which we got after 2 days. And you can see it was so bleeding edge that I even misspelled the title. It's not DBD, but DDB. However, the core idea in this white paper was quite striking, because our core idea back then was simply yet powerful. Why are result lists so dumb? Why must users constantly bounce back and forth between a result list and a detailed record, losing their context every time they click? And our concept, which you can see here as a just in PowerPoint moved mock-up, envisioned that for the vast majority of searches, users would never need to leave the result list, and the key details from the record view would be pulled in right from our catalog into the result list. And I still think this idea was excellent at the time, but there was no room for it at the German Digital Library. Too much effort was required just not to normalize metadata across the many participants, institutions, and cultural sectors. And so 10 years passed and nothing happened. 3 more years passed and still nothing happened. By then, I was already here at the Berlin State Library, and I still believed in this idea. But back then, our discovery system, no, it wasn't really any sort of discovery system, our OPAC, traditional OPAC, just looked like this over here. And it's still online if you want to get some fancy feelings over there. So as you can see, this is software, well, mildly put, 20 years old, 25 years old, something like this. And it's just not up to the task of enhancing any aspect of it in a meaningful way. So we were still stuck with this kind of software back then. But then in 2021, one guy entered the Berlin State Library. You heard him before, Achim Bonte, and he immediately initiated 2 projects, which at least for me became more impactful and productive than most of the stuff I have done before. First, he commissioned a social intranet, but that's another story for another day. And the second, he wanted a modern discovery system, and we choose VuFind. And we launched our first beta of the new Stabikat based on VuFind just 1.5 years later. So this was in January of 2023. And then again, 5 years later in the summer, we had a small window of opportunity where I could say, okay, hey, developers, look at this old idea, 15 years old, let's do this. And we did it. And this is what it looks like, the expandable discoverer panel. We never came up with a striking term for what you're about to see. So I'm still up for discussion for some proper branding here. But let's see what it does. So this is our Stabikat based on VuFind, and there we have a result list, mainly containing our digital collections over here. And as you can see, we have a thumbnail. Well, that's quite ordinary. But then we have a preview of the first 10 pages of the digitized volumes. And you can move over the pages, and then you have a hover zoom. So you can clearly see, okay, these are actually music notes over here. And then you see, okay, there's a +10 or a +38 or a +457. And if you click here, things are getting really interesting. We are still on the VuFind research page, but now we have an interface where we can browse through all these 400 open up every single volume of them, and you can see, okay, here's a color chart if you want to see if it's correct or not. You can switch to the metadata view, so you don't have to leave any of your context over here. And we even have our table of content pages of the different volumes. Let's see if there's something interesting over here. Yeah, this looks a little bit better. So this is the table of content. And here you can just choose to, okay, I want just this section here as a PDF. You go to the PDF download, and then you can even decide with resolution you need for your purpose. And all of it, so this is the first time we really leave the results page, obviously. Everything before this is just browsing within an ordinary VuFind result page, but enhanced with information from our digital collections. So after 15 years, we were finally able to show this very idea to the world. And so this is my first takeaway for today. Open source can and should be an engine for innovation, not just for, okay, we don't need license fees and maybe it's less expensive than commercial solutions. We can be agile, we can experiment, and we can finally make something like this happen over here. And we are so proud of this solution that we even made a video, and let's see if this works. Oh, it's really choppy out there. Okay. It's smooth like butter here on my screen, so. Nevertheless, I think the point comes across. It took me about 2 hours to create a video like this. It's really easy if you know your stuff with ScreenFlow or something like this. So you will have a good idea. It's not only important to get it on the road, but, well, do bright things and tell the world about it. Do you know the concept of the feedback sandwich? The idea behind the feedback sandwich is that you start with something positive, proceed to the ugly middle part, and end on a positive note. And, well, you may have already guessed it. This was now the first positive slice, and now we proceed to the ugly middle part. But this will hurt, not just a little bit, but I think it's necessary. Let's talk about design and user experience of open source project and of VuFind in particular. This screen over here should look familiar to all of you. This is what a vanilla VuFind looks like, including the publicity accessible demo on our project website. These screenshots are exactly 3 days old. And quite a few things go wrong here. And even if it's hurt, I want to walk you through all of them one by one. So let's start gently with this delete button over here. What do you notice? Any ideas? Why does it look like a lying egg? Why isn't it perfectly round as everywhere else on the internet? Is there a reason for this? That users have to face something they're not accustomed to. So just to indicate, this is what the actual form is, and the left is a perfect circle. Why is that? Right next to it, why is the search button 1 pixel taller at the top and at the bottom as the other fields out there? Yes, it is pixel peeing, but at least at a subconscious level, you perceive some, well, some uneven feelings of the overall design. And why is the lower drop-down field over here? Why does it have a dark corner, but the one at the top doesn't have this border around it? And why is the lower one so wide when there are only 2 digits to display over here? So why do we waste all this screen space over here? And why is it on its own line? Why does it rearrange with the sort drop-down field? And there are these buttons. We have a search button and we have a more button over here, which are quite similar, but not exactly the same. This one is more gray and it has a dark border around it. Why is that? the overall layout of this thing here is kind of weird. We have some sort of white space here with just a little text line, then these two elements. And what's wrong with these bubbles here, with the number bubbles? Why are they aligned vertically correct? Or why are they not aligned to the rest of the line over here? Question over question. I think we can agree on that this user interface is in no means a real disaster, but it's sloppy. I think that's the right term here. It's sloppy. It's lacking any attention to detail. And I think in a world where other projects with commercial companies and lots of funding, it's difficult for us to be competitive if we are sloppy in such an area over here. And in my 25 years of experience, this is sadly symptomatic for open source project as a whole. So I believe we have a very relevant central problem here, and I'd like to introduce a term for it today, and I'd like to call it design death. You already know the term technical death. Yeah, you are stuck on all technology. We can't migrate it. We can't innovate because we are, well, stuck with all dependencies. And I think there's quite a similar problem here, and I'd like to address it as design death. You know, all these famous internet laws like Moore's law for the doubling of computing, or Brooks law, which is displayed here. Adding more manpower to a late software project makes it later. So we have already 4 coders here on the project, and it's late, it's getting late, so we add more resources to the project, and then the output will decrease instead of increasing because of all the overhead we have to integrate this new colleague of us. And I think if we take a step back, we can generate this and frame it as a new rule. The marginal utility of each additional programmer in an open source project drops rapidly until the first user experience designer joins the project. And so if the 4th person in a software project comes from an UX and design domain, every feature becomes more usable, more visible, and the project is taken seriously in the market. Bringing user experience and design in early and in earnest can halt the otherwise inevitable decline and nerdification of open source projects. I think open source projects tend to nerdificate. So this is a way how we can stop this and how we should stop this. And I've condensed this into a, well, maybe slightly provocative formula, but I really mean it. And it's the design depth law. Any open source project with a graphical user interface should be met with rejection unless it commits at least 1/4 of its resources to user experience and design. Oh my. Okay, you made it. We are back at the feedback sandwich, and now we're going to the top, the awesome part. Hope it will feel awesome. Because the next slide, you're invited to roll your eyes all over the place, because I want to talk about artificial intelligence and the library catalog. And everybody nowadays is talking about artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of bullshit out there. And I still believe that artificial intelligence has quite a lot to offer for a project like VuFind, and I'd like to explain to you why. The first wave of artificial intelligence applications and libraries hit in the spring of last year. And the FEP-OPAC was the first library catalog worldwide to load its entire collection into an embedding vector space and make it searchable through a large language model. And just have to skip some pages, I think, over here. Right. And this is what it looks like. So this is our OPAC, our library catalog site. And if you click this AI assistant down on the bottom, a whole new application starts up and you can chat with our collection, which is quite funny and quite entertaining, and it gives some interesting results. And it opens up some new possibilities, such as making our catalog accessible in 83 languages. For a city like Berlin, that's a killer feature, and a quantum leap in digital inclusion. But it also comes clear the results may be imprecise, sometimes fabricated, and poorly ranked. They simply lack the precision of our hardened metadata, our hardened metadata databases. And you may know this meme graphic over here. This is a typical Apple product. Everything is touch. That's what Apple users like to do. And here we have a classic Google product. There's just one search bar and no more complexity. And in contrast to this is our library application. Lots and lots of expert search options, expertly done, but, well, quite confusing for the people out there. And the message is meant to be, well, forget it. Yeah? Today's users are only used to use Apple and Google-like complexity and won't ever engage with our over-complex tools. And we struggle with that for a long time now, because our position as libraries is, and rightly so, I think, a Google search is often under-complex, and its results list embarrassingly dumb, just as we've seen before in our implementation of the digitized objects in the VuFind research phase. And we are proud of our metadata, and our expert searches are genuinely useful. And so in countless training sessions, we try to teach users how to operate our systems, and largely without any success. But now I'd like to show you something. I came up with this idea on a VuFind workshop we held at our library 4 or 5 months ago. And the idea was, okay, what if we combine the real strength of a large language model, which is to understand the user and to communicate with it and get an idea of what the user really wants, and combine it with our really strength, which is metadata and our exact catalog. And I called it persona search. And now we're starting with, well, let's search for Harry Potter. And we have a result set, just as you would expect. These are the books of the Harry Potter series. And now we change the search prompt and say, more from the author of Harry Potter. And now something interesting is happening over here. We've seen that this tab here has changed from a title search to an author's changed. And we see this info here from the large language model. I interpret more from the author of Harry Potter as an author search from J.K. Rowling sorted by relevance. And now we have an extended search just looking for J.K. Rowling. Well, now let's say more like Harry Potter. More books. And then and again, the tab changed to the genre search. And we have more books like Harry Potter is now a genre search, nach fantasy, young adult, magic, school, sorted by relevance. And we have the, well, it's over there. It's Twilight, well. And last Harry Potter movie. And we get the tab for the film search with just the right part as the answer. And so what this prototype here, but it's a running prototype on actual code, you can see the code right here, is doing is we have an expert search in the back, which is invisible to the user. And the large language model just acts like a sort of a perfect librarian, looks what the users are really after, and then clicks the right boxes and fills the right search terms in our already existing expert search. So there's no additional coding on the search engine or on the library catalog itself. It's just an additional layer in front to the user to harness the power of an expert search to someone who just don't want to play with it or to learn it. And I think that's quite a good idea, again. And I was not keen on waiting for another 15 years until we implement this. And so I started to show these some people, and my colleague Moritz Mutter took, well, 2 evenings to prototype it into our new VuFind Alpha search engine. And this is an actual user interface. I can't access this from here via this network, but you can see, okay, you can now choose an AI search, and the user interface, just a mock-up, but it really works, down there is quite similar to the one I made up. And we are combining here the greatest strength, large language models, understanding what we mean, and our greatest strength, the precision of an expert search. And I'm convinced that this approach will make waves out there. We have something that neither Google nor the AI chatbot operators can replicate. They simply lack our hardened databases. And when the time is right for a good idea, several people often have it at once. We'll hear just this afternoon from Dorian Gross out there on natural language search in the Stabikat catalog, who came up with a very similar approach. So the combination of VuFind and artificial intelligence can yield interesting results at yet another level. This is the code you just saw, about 800 lines. And I said before, I wrote this in an afternoon, about 2 hours it took me. And that's not entirely true. I had it written by an artificial intelligence in a programming language I don't know particularly well, which is JavaScript. I just don't do JavaScript. So I did not write a single line of code myself for this prototype. This is now called vibe coding. You may have heard this term before, and it attracts plenty of criticism and ridicule. But what's often overlooked is this. I do not claim that this is production-ready code, but it's a genuine proof of concept, one that uses a real interface and real data, and I'm not pretending that it works, but I can prove that it works, this approach, and that's a huge difference. And this year, I ran an experiment. In 2 sessions, I seated a total of 16 librarians at laptops running a Cursor IDE with Claude Sonnet 3.7, one of the best coding large language models. And they had 3 hours to solve a real-world problem, which they made up some days before, or some task from their daily work. And none of these 16 librarians ever had programmed a single line of code. They just didn't know how to code anything. And it was almost unsettling how far these complete novices, yet domain experts, got in those 3 hours. They solved real-world problems like, for example, here connecting an old ticket printer to a newly generated input form and a barcode scanner. And they were exhilarated to finally have an IT person truly listen to them and understand them. And in 25 years of IT, I have not witnessed such an empowerment moment beyond these workshops. And I think there is enormous potential here. Enable domain experts to create proof of concept plugins, themes, and extensions, yes, for VuFind. To build integrations to external data sources and so on and so forth. The best of these can be implemented properly and written up carefully. But vibe coding is not a free ride. I've been researching this field for 2 years now, and I keep noticing the same pattern. The initial phase is quite rocky until the AI has internalized the framework and truly gets going. And then follows this euphoric phase of anything goes, with astonishingly rapid progress. But beyond a certain complexity threshold, however, the AI falters and errors creep in and dependencies remain unsolved, and you enter a long loop of debugging and refactoring your generated code. It's just a deep valley of tears, and you are mostly challenged to just stop the whole thing. But if you rush through, you can be productive again if you want to. And my librarians made it to the first edge of this valley, so somewhere here within 3 hours. And that's good enough for a proof of concept. We can stop there. Because after that, something like a Christmas tree approach kicks in, every more features that through excessive complexity starts to get in the way of what may have been a brilliant core idea. So you don't have to push through this valley of tears just for a proof of concept. And so if I could make one wish for this conference here, it would be that we keep our strategic horizon wide and open. It's not enough to be on the right side by being open source, but to win over strangers, we must be better than the rest. And thanks to open source, we have a far better experimental field. May the best ideas prevail. And may they do so also through AI and its empowerment potential for our colleagues who've so far stood a little apart from our tech projects. The results then need to be pressed through substantial investment into a user experience and a design that are truly competitive and inspiring. Our physical libraries on the ground have reinvented themselves for many years now, from collection-centric institutions into so-called third places, opening up new roles in the physical world. And it is truly time that we also turn libraries into inspiring engines of innovation in the digital realm. The conditions have never been better, and VuFind can and should be the key here. So let's embrace bold ideas, use creative ways of execution like artificial intelligence, and present them in pixel-perfect results. Thank you.